Welcome to Directionally Speaking. I'm Jeff Zentz. I am the Senior Director of Innovation for Agronovis, Indiana, and we're here to talk about innovation and how innovation impacts the bioscience. I'm joined today by Ryan Skaar from NanoBioDesigns, and we're going to be talking about what's going on in innovation in his world, how we can impact, how we as an ecosystem can support, and also his journey. So thanks for being here. Ryan, I'd love if you'd give a little bit of a quick intro of yourself, and then we'll dive into the conversation.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Ryan Skaar with NanoBioDesigns, founder and CEO, COO, apologies. What NanoBio's mission is to provide actual insights to grain identity for harvested grain distributors. So essentially, our mission is to make genetic detection no big deal for harvested grain distributors, seed suppliers, and processors across the supply chain.
Ryan, that's awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about how do you end up here? How do you end up doing this work with NanoBio? What was your path to becoming a founder?
So I'd say the path was pretty straightforward, but obviously a winding road at some level. So I was in grad school at the time, and my former academic advisor in undergrad reached out to me from Simpson College, and he said, hey, we've got this idea with these nanoparticles that we've been developing, things that I had been a part of as an undergrad. It's like, do you want to come back to Iowa and kind of see where this takes us? And this is a text message, chain going back and forth, right? I was pretty much just finishing up with my master's at the time, and I was like, sure. Why not? Let's get back to Iowa, and this is right before COVID happens, which is kind of another wrinkle to the story, and I'm sure there's many other entrepreneurs that have that wrinkle as well.
Sure.
So get back to Iowa. We kind of start digging back into the research project. We start growing, doing that customer discovery process, figuring out where the market is, et cetera, all the important things that you should essentially do before you start doing research, but we're kind of doing it at the same time, right? Lo and behold, we've made some milestones, made some progress, and we got to a point in Iowa where we were looking to broaden our resources and kind of not just expand the team, but just expand the areas that we were impacting. And so opportunity came up, and the real story behind this, I got married, and my wife is from Indiana, so I always have to put that plug in there first. That's really part of the entrepreneurial story, is I got married, and it made more sense to move to Indiana. But the way our team was structured, and because we could work virtually and expand our resources that way, it made sense to do so. So I moved to Indiana. We moved our headquarters of NanoBio to Indiana, and I started building a network out here relatively organically, starting with Agronovis, which we've continued to engage with, as here we are with Velocity now. Yeah. And connecting with Purdue, connecting with Elevate Ventures, connecting with Beck's Hybrids. And so now, 3 years later, we have two functioning groups essentially operating, one in Iowa and then obviously me out here in Indiana, where we're heading the progress up. And so that's what's led us to Indiana, is marriage and getting married to Indiana at the same time, right? So that's the big part of the story, is how we got here. And then the other part of the story is just what we've been able to progress through our time here in Indiana, and taking advantage and leveraging the resources that we have here across the Midwest now.
Yeah, Ryan, we're thankful for both of those marriages. We're thankful that that marriage brought you to here to marry to Indiana. So, speaking of Velocity, so I'm thankful that you are part of this program. This is our first real expansion of innovation support and acceleration. What are your hopes? What are the things that over the next 6 months, as you work with the Agronovis team and Velocity, but also the broader ecosystem that's going to come together to support you? Where are you going NanoBio-wise? What are we hoping to accomplish over this partnership and driving the business forward?
I kind of hinted to it before, but just really now leveraging and getting actionable progress happening with some of these network providers that we want to operate with, whether that's a Corteva, that's a Beck's, or on the seed supplier side. We know that there's a large elevator influence. Forgive me the name of, I should know this, who just had the big merger? Keystone, right? Keystone Cooperatives. Those types of groups, we are really hoping to leverage those interactions, not just from, we've built the relationships at some level now. Now we're trying to actually integrate ourselves into what they're working on. And so What we're gaining is we've been validating our device and our technology platform through these last 3 years of being in Indiana. Our next steps through Velocity is we really want to gain on that traction now and start putting our devices and systems at these places, at these locations. And so that really comes in the form of pilots, is how can we figure out and how can we work through Velocity to design pilots to figure out how can we best integrate with some of these companies that are trying to do grain identity verification across their own local supply chains into larger domestic and international markets, and how can we make an impact in providing genetic detection, or whether that's non-GMO verification or GMO verification for specialty contracts or grain supply. That's what we're hoping to do, is get a better insight into what those customers need and how can we integrate our technology into their systems through the form of a pilot.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So if those potential folks are listening, let's peel back a level. Let's talk
Sure.
let's talk to Jeff, the non-educated person. Like, what is that real problem point that you're coming to the table with that really moves the needle for your potential customers, and where those pilots could be enacted?
Yep. So I think the real needle for our technology, where we want it to sit, is at the point where we're, and the wording that I've come up with recently, as we kind of speak candidly, is at truck to bin decision making. Right? So you have all those trucks show up to your elevator, whether you're consolidating grain for further market selling or you're processing. Like, you have a bunch of trucks come up, and you've got to make a decision on every single truck, whether you accept it, reject it, or which bin you're going to place it in, right? And so current processes now, if you're going to do grain identity verification, is you're going to take a couple samples from a couple different trucks, you're going to merge it, you're going to bucket it, but then to really get a true understanding of what that identity is, you got to take that sample and you send it off to a lab, and you're waiting 3 days to get a result before you can confidently move that grain across the supply chain, right? And so if we can intersect our DNA-based microparticle technology with our simple device and stick platform, we want that decision-making to be happening in 15 minutes. Where truck rolls in, you take that sample, and then you run our DNA-based test stick, and you can understand, hey, is that a GMO? Is it GMO-free? Whatever you're looking for, we want to be able to verify that for you in under 15 minutes. So that's the goal, is so that you can move that truck to its bin and keep the process going. So keep trucks rolling, keep grain flowing. That's the other coin turn, right?
Love it. We need some T-shirts.
Yep.
Ryan, one quick additional question. If they're doing grain identification right now, what is that time frame in the current landscape to try to get that ID done?
Yep, so it depends. There are some on-site available tests. That's like a protein strip test, very similar to a pregnancy test or something like that. That's relatively instant, under 30 minutes, similar time frame to what we're trying to accomplish. But if you talk to our friends at Beck's Hybrids, like Brad Fruth and other industry providers, they have a lot of accuracy issues. They don't always detect every trait available, especially with new genetics coming down the line. And so the flip side is, you want to do the genetic-based test, you got to send that off to the lab, and you're going to wait 3 days for that result. So that's the current time frame. And so industry currently adapts that by just taking multiple samples, aggregating them, putting it into the bin anyway, and you kind of take on a little bit of that risk, and if something pops up, then you try to blend out of it. Is the main solution right now. But eventually, if that happens enough, you get compounding error, and you can end up with larger contamination events, as we've seen in history with load rejections at the ports in China. You have the Liberty Link or Starlink contamination, those types of things. And so those are the types of risks that we're hoping to mitigate, as well as keep supply chain moving. So we don't want to delay any of that normal process. We just want to add more confidence to it.
Ryan, that's awesome. Thank you for that. And I think it gives a clear picture of the value you're bringing, what opportunities exist, and also, how you're differentiating, which is ultimately the goal.
Yep. No big deal, right?
No big deal. Overnight success.
There we go.
Ryan, let's get a little bit more on just the experience as a founder. What are the one or two biggest challenges you faced as being a founder and diving into this world?
Sure. You could always, any founder could obviously accessing capital funding. Yes, that is a challenge, but I think when you've really done your efforts like we have on what you're trying to solve, the funding tends to come when you need it, right? When the right opportunities come. So I would say The biggest experience and portion is just like sharing that story of what we're trying to accomplish, because we are trying to do something new and something different. And so, yes, it's really obvious to us, but it's not always obvious to somebody else on how you're going to integrate it. And the moment you throw the word nanoparticles out there, it's like, whoa, what's going on? It's like, well, it's just little plastic things, right? Not a big deal. And so that's really part of I would also say the fun part of the experience, as well as the challenges. How do you do that storytelling? I like to say I'm from Story City, Iowa originally, so I like to say storytelling is part of where I'm from. And so while that is the hardest challenge for most entrepreneurs, I think that has also been the most fun part for us, is how do we share that story of where we're going and what we've done, and how do you integrate that at the right time. Is a unique experience in that you're not going to get that in a corporate environment for sure.
For sure. Okay, so I've got maybe one or two more questions for you. The next one that I have that, as we're thinking about, folks are listening, obviously we've already outlined that if there's opportunity for pilot, that's a big need for what
Sure.
you're doing.
Yeah.
But for those who may not be a pilot partner, are there any other things that you, at this moment in time, need help or support from the broader Indiana ecosystem on?
For sure. Interestingly enough, you might not be a pilot partner, but I feel like in the Midwest, everybody does know an elevator connection, right? So those are always welcome. We actually just got word recently about opportunities for interns through Purdue University. And so there's been some funding available for just employment opportunities for students. I think education is kind of how I got started in working with my academic advisor, and it appears I'm old enough now to start bringing the next part of that in. And so we're actually probably looking for an intern this summer. So those are always another part of the piece of the puzzle, of finding that right piece and who we're going to fit into our team next, whether that's for a short-term stint or long-term. So we'll definitely take advice to the wider audience. If you got a qualified intern that wants to get in the lab, but wants to, have opportunities beyond the lab bench to help with other entrepreneurial aspects. So whether it's market research, you'll be working pretty closely with me on a lot of things. So I'll put that out there right now as well.
That's awesome, and that's a great plug, and
Yep.
And an awesome opportunity for anybody who may be wanting to get into this space. Ryan, my last question for you today. Thanks for giving your time today, but it's really about your perspective on folks that are potentially outside of our industry and the opportunities that you've seen here, and why you've had success, and what makes bioscience special and has been a level up for you. What does that look like as a whole? Like, what would you encourage the next crop of folks to be thinking about when it comes to innovation in bioscience?
Sure. I mean, I would call it the party line of Indiana right now is right. Ag really touches every part of health, food, and I forget the party line, I guess. But ag bio really touches the majority of industries that are critical to not just infrastructure of the economy, but just infrastructure of our own personal well-being, right? And so I think there is always opportunity, and there should always be resources put towards things that give people more food, make people healthier, help people get from point A to point B quicker, help those types of things. My dad's got a story. We always had to go into for our majors in college. Like, look, people are always going to be hungry. People are always going to be sick. People always need a place to live. People always need to get from point A to point B. And then also people will always be in trouble. So doctor, ag, engineering, lawyer, et cetera. And so the opportunities are always there in ag. And the unique thing about the ag industry and ag sciences, it's a different type of person. We're touching on the tech industry, but it is a Midwest culture. And I think we should embrace that more of like, hey, we're going to work with you. We're going to communicate with you. We're going to tell it to you how it is, directionally speaking, right? And we'll go from there.
That's right. Ryan, thank you for the plug. Thank you for the time.
Sure.
And I would be remiss if I didn't also use it as an opportunity to, as our dear CEO, Mitch Frazier, says, it's the only industry on the planet that touches every person every single day.
There it is.
So, gang, thank you for taking the time. Thank you. For those who want to know more about Ryan and his journey, there will be links to Nano. And feel free to reach out to the Agronovus team. We'd love to connect you if you think you might be a pilot partner or somebody who can help. And again, thanks for taking the time, Ryan. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and best of luck in Velocity.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Jeff.